Okay, this is very laggy. That's fine. This is page number 8 in our binders for the 2022 to 23 school year. I'm title it page 8, and this is all about evaluating expressions, which we've done for several years in Texas. What's different this year is now we get a calculator, so we're going to really focus on how to type things in the calculator because we've dealt with how to use our order of operations in the past, so that's not something that's new to us. Now I just want to clarify that the expressions we're working with are algebraic, which means that there are variables in them. And because we're evaluating them, that means we actually know what the letter is equal to. We know the value of whatever variable is given to us, and they've told us off to the side in the example problems. There's an x and a y in the first problem, and they tell us what x should be and what y should also be. Okay. So the very first thing that we're going to do is we're going to substitute every value. So this tells us y is 2. We're going to plug that into everywhere that we see a y. So substitute all of the values for each variable or unknown throughout the problem. Okay. Now in class we focused on using the Desmos calculator, right? In class we used the Desmos calculator. Used Desmos. So in this video I'm going to focus on using the ti-84 calculator. Desmos is nice because that's what you guys typically have access to at home. And I need to charge my computer, so let me pause this video. Okay, so the video has been paused. I plugged my computer in, we're all good. In class we used Desmos, and these steps were not the ones for Desmos. For Desmos, you clicked on the little keyboard icon. It had like a little keyboard things with a little arrow. And you clicked on that, and there was a slew of options there for you, and we practiced a lot in class about how to type things in. Oh, I forgot the next blank. After we've substituted the values in, so we've put numbers everywhere we see a letter, then you just use the order of operations to evaluate. In case you have forgotten, those are the order of operations. However, the new thing to us in 8th grade is that we do get the use of a calculator. So, L-A-T-O-R, calculator. We're going to try and use our calculator for that this year. So these calculator tips are specific to when you're typing on the ti-84 calculator. ti-84. Okay. If you don't have access to a ti-84 calculator, there's a really great app. I don't remember the name of it. I'm sure I've mentioned it somewhere on my YouTube channel. You can also download an emulator on a computer. I know I have a video for a tutorial on that. Moving on, this symbol here that we see outside of the question mark is called a square root. And if you see that symbol, these are the steps you take to type that on your ti-84 calculator. Next is, it's hard to see, this is a little question mark with an @ by it. I'm using symbols because I didn't want to put numbers in those places. I don't want to use actual numbers right now. So this is called a power. It's important to know that the question mark is the base. That's the thing that gets repeatedly multiplied. And then the number that I have in place of the @ symbol, that's called the exponent. Okay. And again, if you're using the caret top key, you do have to click the right arrow to start typing outside of the exponent. After that, we've got just a normal fraction. We have a question mark as the numerator and an exclamation point as the denominator. If it helps you remember for the next two things, alpha is the green button. Some of you guys already know that because you've been typing in words. That's fantastic. After a fraction, we've got a symbol off to the left. So if you have a number followed by a fraction, that's a mixed number. That in math just means the whole number plus whatever the fraction is. So you could type that in on your calculator using this fraction shortcut, or you could actually type in a mixed number on your calculator using these steps here. And then these are parentheses. They just close off groups for us, and they are above the 8 and 9 keys. Okay. The first thing I like to do is I rewrite exactly what I see, but instead of letters, I put bubbles. By bubbles, I mean the set of parentheses. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit more. If I click the zoom button, that'll work better. Zoom, zoom, zoom. Okay. And all down. Okay. So I'm rewriting the square root, and then I'm putting parentheses for whatever the number x stands for. And then plus sign, and then parentheses for whatever that y is. All over 2. So I've copied everything down, but instead of the letter, I've just put a set of parentheses. Now x is 256, so inside of the parentheses, we'll put 256. And y, they've said, is 2, so I'll put a 2 in place of that. Okay. So now on our calculator to type that in, helps if the calculator's on. You press the square root. Now the square root's the button in blue above x squared, so you type the blue button followed by x squared, and you see the square root pop up. 256 had to be under that, and then we hit plus. Although I noticed that when we do that, the plus sign is still underneath the square root, under the radical. So I'm going to go back, and I'm going to delete just the plus sign. If you hit clear, that whole line will clear off, and that's not what you want. To get out of the square root, the radical, you're going to hit the right arrow, and now we're out of it. Plus, now we want to type in a fraction. To type in a fraction, we've got the green button, alpha, y equals. If you have a normal fraction, you want to click this first option, numerator / denominator. If you have a mixed number, you want to use the second one. So we've got that. And then the fraction is 2 over 2, and I have the parentheses up here. You don't need those parentheses since it's just the one number inside of it, but it doesn't ever hurt to have them either. I'm done typing, so I could hit enter and get my answer. I just want to point out, if you were not done, you wanted to keep typing, maybe you were multiplying something by 8 afterwards, notice that when you continue typing, you're still in the denominator. So I'm going to get rid of those. To get out of the denominator, again, just hit the right arrow, and now you're back to the normal typing. When you hit enter, it gives you your answer, 17. After that, we've got p squared plus the square root of m. This is where writing the parentheses really does help us. So we've got p squared. I've got a bubble for p. Square that. Plus sign, square root sign, and then I need a bubble for m. So I have parentheses for m. In place of p, we're going to use a -5. And in place of m, we put a 1. Okay. And just real quick so I can show you why those parentheses are important. We just had this written down. If I didn't have parentheses, I'd have this written down. We know that this means to take the base as many times as the exponent says. So 2 -5s and then multiply them, right? So here the base as many times as the exponent says, and then multiply them. Okay. -5 times -5 is positive 25. And then this is -5 times 5. Well, -5 times 5 is a -25. So there's a big difference here, especially pretend this was somebody's bank account. In this bank account, you're telling them, hey, you have $25, but in this bank account, you're telling them that they owe $25. So that's a really big difference. You want to make sure that when you're substituting values in, if there's a negative, especially if there's exponents involved, use your parentheses. That doesn't affect us a whole lot when we're not dealing with exponents, but it's good practice to, when you're plugging numbers in, just put the parentheses around it. They're not all necessary, but they are all helpful. Okay. After that, then we can just type this in. So I've got -5 squared inside of parentheses, right? So open parentheses. Now, your calculator, you know that minus and negative are the exact same thing. Your calculator doesn't. So you do have to make sure you're clicking this white negative key by the decimal, not the gray minus key by the other operations. So we're clicking -5, and then we can close the parentheses. There's a button, x squared. If you type that without hitting the second first, then you just get the normal squared key. I'm going to show you how to use the caret top key because it's more helpful. It works for every exponent. So if you click the caret top, now we're typing in an exponent box, in a power box. We've got 2. That's all we wanted to type, so we're going to click the right arrow to get out of that. If I were to continue typing plus the square root, notice I'm still typing in the exponent, and that's not what we wanted. That will be helpful as you get higher level math courses under your belt, though. So now we can hit the right arrow again, and then plus the square root of, so second x squared, 1. If you wanted to have the 1 in the parentheses under the square root, that is also fine. It won't change your value. That's 26. Now, if you did not include the negative in the parentheses, then what you would have got was negative 24. So you're off by a large amount, like 50. Okay. Now looking at the middle row, here I've got, I'm going to put a number, or a bubble in place of z. Okay. And then I'm copying everything else down. So there's a big set of parentheses. And then there's a number x. So now I've got bubble in place of x. And then there's a plus sign. And then there's a y, so another bubble, this time in place of something for y. And then final close parentheses. So what I see here is there's more than one parentheses in a row, and that's okay. Parentheses have to come in pairs, so when you put an open parentheses, wherever you close parentheses, that's considered one whole group right there. So what we've got is inside of this first bubble, we'll have a negative 6 for z. And then there was an open parentheses. That means that x plus y is going to come first. So this is negative 6 times whatever x plus y is equal to. In place of x, we're wanting to put 6 3/4. And in place of y, we want to put 7 1/4. So what your calculator is going to do is your calculator is going to add those things first and then multiply it by negative 6. And it wouldn't have done that if these parentheses weren't here. If those two parentheses weren't here, it would have done the negative 6 times 6 3/4 and then added the 7 1/4. So having the parentheses does help a lot. It never hurts you to have more. It is just helpful to keep everything organized. So to type this in, this is a lot. We've got in parentheses, we'll have negative 6. When you have two parentheses beside each other, you guys know that means times. So does your calculator, so you don't have to hit the times button if you don't want. So I've got the first open parentheses. Now I'm going to type a second open parentheses, and then I can type in 6 3/4. To type in any kind of fraction, and I'm going to start with alpha y equals. If I want a mixed number, we're going to hit the second one. So UND, and it's got the mixed number thing all set up for me. So 6, type over to get to the numerator. 3 is in the numerator. I'm going down. I think you can also hit the right arrow to get to the denominator. And again, I'm going to want to type out, if I type the closed parentheses now, it's only going to the denominator 4. So type the right arrow and get out of that, close the parentheses, and now I'm on plus. We're going to use that same process for 7 1/4. Alpha y equals, the second option is a mixed number. And I don't have this inside of parentheses. That's okay. If you want it inside of parentheses, we can go back and insert parentheses by doing the opposite of delete. So we'll do second delete, and that's going to insert something in place of the plus sign. And I have done that in the wrong spot. So I'm going to hit delete again, second insert, parentheses, over the spot that I wanted it. And now we've got 7 as the whole number, 1 in the numerator, 4 in the denominator. Close parentheses. That's the closed parentheses on the 7 1/4. So I've closed the parentheses for those two things, for the 7 1/4, sorry. I've got the parentheses for the 6 3/4, but I don't have a closed parenthesis for the last thing. You're going to have to type in that last set of parentheses, so make sure you have an even number of parentheses at the end. And that gets us negative 84. The calculators are a blessing and a curse because the calculator will do exactly what you tell it to do. So if you don't type something incorrectly, then you're going to get a wrong answer, not because your calculator didn't know how to do it, but because you didn't know how to use the calculator. I'm going to use that same idea of, especially now that there's exponents involved, instead of x, I'm putting a bubble, a set of parentheses, and then squared, plus sign, a bubble for y, it's cubed, and then minus 2. Now inside of the x set of parentheses, it tells us x is 3, so we can put a 3 there. Inside of the y parentheses, it tells us y is 2, so we put a 2 there. And now we can just type this in. We've got 3 squared, and I'm going to use the caret top key again. Type in the squared. Arrow over to the right to get out of the exponent. Plus, I'm going to put 2 in parentheses and then cube that. Now I'm getting over again. If you have positive numbers here, that's not going to change the value of your exponents, your powers. So it's super important when you do have negatives, use those. If you're more comfortable, and I suggest that you get more comfortable that way, you can add in the parentheses by second, insert. And I want it over the plus sign is where I want the closed parentheses instead of the plus sign there. So I'm going to insert something there as well. Insert the closed parentheses. There we go. So I've got 3 squared plus 2 squared, 2 cubed minus 2. And that is 15. Okay. Looking at mx plus b. These last two are really fun examples because these are actually formulas that we're going to be using a lot during 8th grade math. So you'll find them even on your star chart, super important stuff here. So I'm going to start by placing a bubble for m. In the bubble I could put 3/8. Next I have up the letter x, so we'll also have a bubble for x, and in that bubble I'll put -4. And then I've got a plus sign, and then it says b. B is just a number, so I'll put a set of parentheses for b, and inside of that bubble I can put -1/2. Okay, now I'm just typing this all on my calculator. So I've got open parentheses, alpha y equals, the first option is a normal fraction, so 3 as a numerator, 8 as the denominator. And I close the parentheses. And again, your calculator knows that this is times -4, so you don't have to type the multiplication symbol, but you can if you want. So if you type it and you don't want to, you can just hover over it and click the delete button. And then we got plus. This is a -1/2, so you have to make sure you're not going to type the minus key, you're typing the negative key by the decimal. And then we can type in 1/2, 1/2. Close the parentheses, hit enter, and now we've got -2. As my alarm class is going to start soon, I think I can finish the next example relatively quickly. So this is where we often get really confused, and it's a super important formula in 8th grade math. This is how we find the slope of a line. So all of this stuff, which is just a bunch of letters, actually equals another letter, and that confuses us greatly. Especially because these letters have tiny numbers beneath them. Those are called subscripts. So instead of the tiny number up top, it's the tiny number at bottom. Instead of a super, it's a subscript. I like to think of this, in my 8th period this year, I have 2 Aidens, right? So they're not the same person, obviously, so to differentiate between who is who, so I know who I'm talking to, I know what their last names are. So the Y you can think of as the first name, and then the 2 and the 1 just tells you which number Y that is. So this is the second Y, which is 6, and this is the first Y, which is -3. You can think of the subscript, the tiny number by them, as their last name, and the letter that they are as their first name. And again, this is just a bubble. In every spot, you'll have a bubble minus a bubble, fraction, bubble minus a bubble. Okay. Inside of the y2 bubble, we'll put a 6. Inside of this bubble for y1, we'll put -3. Inside of this bubble, that's in place of x2, we'll put -5. And inside of the last bubble, we have x1, which is negative 10. We'll start by clicking alpha y equals and select a normal fraction. This is going to get really lengthy really fast. So we have 6 in parentheses minus, open parentheses again, and negative 3. And now we can go down to the denominator where we've got negative 5 in parentheses minus negative 10 in parentheses. Now we're out of the fraction and we can hit enter. And we've got 9/5. If you didn't want your answer as a fraction, you wanted it as a decimal, you can hit the math button, and whatever your answer is, you can convert between fractions and decimals by clicking math, and then 1 if you want a fraction, 2 if you want a decimal. So I have a fraction. If I wanted a decimal, I would hit 2. This says make your answer from the last line, which is 9/5, to a decimal. If that's what you want, hit enter, and that's 1.8. If I wanted to change 1.8, I'd hit math. Now it's a decimal right now, so I'd want to make it a fraction. And then I can click enter. Now I've got 9/5. So it's just going back and forth. Okay. Once again, this was page 8 in your binders, and I hope this video was helpful to you.